It's great to be in the SEC. Welcome back to another episode of the SEC Recap Podcast. I am your host, Ben Warren. It is another edition of the Power Rankings episode here on the SEC Recap. We got a lot to go over here, starting with a all-world WTF is wrong with the refs nail biter in Columbia, South Carolina, going to a top 25 matchup. Boston College at Mizzou. Mizzou barely hanging on there. And it capped with the number one team in the country just hanging on by a point in Lexington. We're going to go over all of it, and we're going to run the latest SEC Recap Power Rankings model. While I got you here, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching here on YouTube, smash that like button. Hit that thumbs up on the video. Hit the subscribe button right down there in the bottom right-hand corner. It's right about there. Okay. It means so much to me. This episode last week blew up. Well, blew up in relative terms. Okay. Relative to me. About 1,000 views on that video last week. So it told me that a lot of eyeballs were super into what we're covering here with the power rankings and all that good stuff. So trying to hit you big again this week. So drop a comment, hit the thumbs up, like, subscribe, all that stuff. If you're watching on or listening on Amazon, YouTube Music, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, iHeartTunes, Stitcher, all those great platforms, jump on over here to YouTube, man. I'm going to have some great graphics up on the screen that are just going to make this experience that much more enjoyable. I know Spotify also has video podcasts. YouTube Music also does video podcast episode as well. So feel free to watch along there for all the great graphics while you're listening. Man, let's jump right into it. I want to cover some of the graphics I've been sharing on Twitter before I jump into the rankings. And I am going to go through the rankings quicker this week. I promise, man. But every Sunday when like all the numbers update, all that good stuff, I like to put out a few graphics at the start of the week because this is what I really key in on when I'm running my rankings model, okay? And when I'm kind of estimating point spreads week to week on the games that we're covering here on the podcast. So I want to start by taking a look at that. I'm going to bring it on screen here. And this is directly from my website. This is secrecap.com. Okay. It's my website here, /stats. secrecap.com/stats. Okay. And I post these on here as well. They'll always go live there first before they go on Twitter. So bookmark secrecap.com. Be sure to find all that great stuff there. The first one I put out is the weekly opponent adjusted and non-opponent adjusted EPA per play, offensive and defensive. And EPA has been around for a long time, okay, multiple decades. It's been a popular metric. I'm going to enlarge this here so folks here on the YouTubes can see it. And here's what we're looking at. Along the x-axis here, offensive EPA per play. Along the y-axis, defensive EPA per play. For offensive EPA per play, you want that number to be positively higher, okay? The conference average is right around like 2.1, 2.2, okay? Or sorry, 0.2, 0.22. Can't talk. I'll figure it out eventually. And the conference defensive average is positive as well, but you actually want it to be negative, but it's a positive like 0.175, somewhere around there, okay? I don't have it here on screen, but I'm estimating based on where I have like the conference averages here, okay? So what I'm looking for every week, and the reason that I post this is so followers can see who the top teams in the conference are, who's better than the average in these categories in the conference, okay? So what we're really looking at is this bottom right quadrant. If we divide this whole graph into quadrants, and this is, if you're listening, God bless you, you really need to be on YouTube with us over here, right? or on Spotify watching a video, YouTube Music watching a video. This is going to help you out a lot. We're looking at this bottom right-hand quadrant. And for this week, we have 5 teams that were better than the conference average offensively and defensively in terms of EPA per play overall. Okay. Not passing specific, not rushing specific, overall offensive and defensive EPA per play. In an ideal world, defensive EPA trends negative and offensive EPA trends as positive, as highly positive as possible. Now, the graph that I'm showing here is opponent adjusted. That means it adjusts for the difficulty of the opponent. So, you had Tennessee playing Kent State, who's worst team in the FBS, right? And you had Alabama playing Wisconsin, who's a Power 5 opponent. So it's going to kind of normalize. Normalize is not the right word. It's going to adjust these values. If you want to see a non-adjusted, let me pull that up here for you. All right. It said, okay, so this is the non-opponent adjusted. The title on the graph still says opponent adjusted. This is not. It is a different chart. Ignore that. When I ran it in my environment, I just didn't update that. But opponent adjusted, you'll see, looks very different from the non-opponent adjusted chart here, right? So that's why I like opponent adjusted, because it accounts for the level of difficulty that each team faces. Let me go back to the opponent adjusted. So we had 5 teams this week better than the conference average. That was Texas A&M, Alabama, Tennessee, Texas, and the Ole Miss Rebels. Ole Miss Rebels kind of really standing out there especially in terms of offensive EPA per play. Texas standing out a little bit in terms of defensive EPA per play as well. Guys, what do all 5 of these teams have in common? They all won their games, okay? They all won their games. Let's look at the top left quadrant. This would be the kind of undesirable quadrant to be in. Now, it's opponent adjusted. I know you're going to see a couple names in here that you're going to go, wait. They won their game. Yes, they did. But we're going to talk about kind of these teams grouped in the middle here. I'm going to draw your attention to 2 teams grouped in the upper left quadrant here. This is where you don't want to be. Mississippi State, who lost to Toledo, okay? And the Florida Gators, who lost a game at home to Texas A&M, a team that is in the bottom right-hand quadrant 1, if you will. So Mississippi State and Florida are in quadrant 4, the worst quadrant you could be in, right? What do they have in common? They lost in embarrassing fashion, particularly at home. Now let's look at these teams grouped in the middle, kind of close to the conference averages, okay? We have, again, 5 teams kind of grouped really tightly together here at the conference average. We have LSU, Missouri, Arkansas, South Carolina, Vanderbilt. What do all 5 of these teams have in common? They played very, very, very close games. Winnable, losable, you be the judge. But all of these teams grouped right around the conference average basically played toss-up games. Could have almost gone either way in the fourth quarter. We'll talk a little more in depth about those games when we get into the rankings, okay? I just want to draw your attention to that before we get into the power rankings, because some of the things I'm going to talk about harken back to this graph. If you're not on YouTube or not watching a video form, go on over to YouTube, subscribe to the channel, follow this. I post this on Twitter every week, but this is going to give you clarity, okay, on how this is important, why this is important, and how it affects the outcome of every single game. All right. I'm going to go to one more here. I'm just going to scroll down my stats page here on secrecap.com/stats. And I also post the passing and rushing efficiency of each SEC team. Okay. Now, this one you generally want to trend up and to the right. Okay. So yards per rush attempt along the x-axis. Okay. So the farther to the right you are, the better. More rushing yards per attempt. And then yards per pass attempt along the y-axis. So you want to trend higher as well. You want to trend as far to the right as possible and as high as possible. That would be quadrant 1. So a little bit different breakdown. I want to draw your attention to something, guys. Okay. There are 5 teams solidly grouped in this quadrant 1 in passing rushing efficiency. I'm going to read them off to you. Texas A&M, Alabama, Tennessee, Texas, Ole Miss. What do those 5 teams have in common? 2 things. Number 1, they're the same 5 teams that are grouped in quadrant 1 on that EPA opponent adjusted chart we just looked at. Okay. Number 2, they all won their games. You run the ball well, you pass the ball well, you defend well, you have a great chance of winning your game. I'm going to draw your attention now on this same graph. 2 teams that are trending far to the left and down. That would be quadrant 4, the worst quadrant. Okay. Florida, Mississippi State. The same 2 teams that were in the worst quadrant in offensive and defensive EPA are also the worst weekly offensive efficiency teams in terms of yards per rush and yards per pass. Okay. You'll also see Kentucky's way down there, Georgia's way down there. Again, this grouping is not opponent adjusted. If we opponent adjusted, you would see that kind of same grouping of teams kind of come in there towards the middle, towards the conference averages. And if I drew a big circle around here, you can see it's the same teams. It's South Carolina, Missouri, Vanderbilt, LSU, kind of grouped there closer to the average. All right. So that's why I post these charts, guys. They go hand in hand, but they both help illuminate one another in terms of what makes a team successful week to week. It's offensive efficiency, it's defensive efficiency, and it's a field position game. In the SEC, if you run the ball well, you're probably going to be able to throw the ball well, which probably means your offense is always going to be in advantageous field position. Okay. All right. Hopefully that helps clarify a little bit of what we're about to get into. Let's jump into the rankings, starting with the team that comes in at number 16 in the rankings model this week, Mississippi State Bulldogs. And honestly, I don't know how you can't have Mississippi State at the number 16 spot this week. Okay. I'm going to close that out and bring that back in. I'm getting kind of a weird ratio size there. That looks a lot better. All right. So they dropped 3 spots. Last week, number 13, they dropped to 16. You get beat at home 41-17 by Toledo. I just don't know what else to do to you. Blake Shapen wasn't bad, 319 yards. He was actually kind of middle of the road in my quarterback efficiency rankings. 71% completion rating, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's at a 140. That's good for number 10 this week in my quarterback rankings. But you paid like $1.3 million to get your ass whipped by Toledo. I really look. I hope Jeff Lebby's the guy. I really do. I hope Jeff Lebby is the guy. Maybe this is and Nick Saban, Louisiana Monroe kind of wake up, get it in gear moment for the Mississippi State Bulldogs. We'll hope. We'll hope. Coming in at number 15, actually jumping a spot because they were number 16 last week, the Florida Gators. Now, I know they lost. Texas A&M beat them at home. We're going to kind of talk about this game a little bit, okay? Because it's a shit show dumpster fire down there in Gainesville. And there's already news coming out that the Florida Board of Trustees is meeting to discuss the buyout and thus the termination of Billy Napier as the head coach of the Florida Gators. Now, the point spread on this game wasn't massive. I had Texas A&M as a 4-point favorite on the road. But Florida kind of loses this game in embarrassing fashion. Okay. 33-20 final score, 13 points. It really wasn't as close as that final score looks. Florida scores 6 in the fourth quarter there to pull it a little closer. Texas A&M really ran away with this game, and they ran away with it early. No Connor Wegman in this game. It was all Marcel Reed, 11 of 17, 178 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. That put him at number 7 in my quarterback rankings. Okay. He was pretty good. 12.8 average yards per attempt for a 1.53. I had him literally just behind Nico Iamaleava, who played a quarter and a half against Kent State. Okay. Le'Veon Moss, 18 carries for 110 yards. Marcel Reed, 13 carries, 83 yards, and a touchdown on the ground. Cyrus Allen through the air, 3 receptions, 81 yards, a touchdown. Orstrom, 1 long for 29 yards and a touchdown. Graham Mertz, honestly, guys, I know people were excited for DJ Lagway last week. Graham Mertz was not that bad. And guess what? He was actually the better quarterback this week. Graham Mertz was better than DJ Lagway in this game. Let me read you the numbers. Graham Mertz, 12 of 15, 80%, 195 yards, 11.3 average or adjusted yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. I had him rated at a 189.29. Guys, you know where that puts him in my quarterback rankings for the week? Number 2. Behind who? A guy we're going to talk about at the very end of this episode. A guy you hadn't seen all year, really. Number 2, guys, Graham Mertz was my number 2 quarterback in terms of passing efficiency. You know who was my number 18? And the reason there's 18 is because we had backup quarterbacks have to come in and play a minimum of 10 snaps, which is my criteria to be included in the rankings. Very last quarterback this week, DJ Lagway. Graham Mertz, number 2. DJ Lagway, number 18. 6 of 13, 46.2% completion rating. Negative 1.2 adjusted yards per attempt. 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. He had 4 carries for negative 20 yards. I know people were excited about DJ Lagway. I was actually kind of excited about DJ Lagway. I thought he would be the difference. But that little 1-2 punch thing, it ain't your Chris Leak, Tim Tebow era. No, sir. Not even close, man. Whatever they were doing didn't work. And let's go back to the passing rushing efficiency. What did Florida not do well? Run the ball. Barely 2 yards per rush attempt. When you can't run the ball, guess what that doesn't let you do well? Pass the ball. Texas A&M comes away with a huge, huge road win. And the consolation prize, if you're Florida, is a new interim head coach. and your fourth head coach in what, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, whatever. Mm. Coming in at number 14, actually staying put this week from last week, Vanderbilt Commodores. Now they lose on the road to Georgia State. Georgia State's got it out for the SEC, man. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about that program. They've got it out for the SEC, man. All 30 fans of the stands rushed the field after beating Vanderbilt there at home. But hey, man, credit to them. 36-32. Diego Pavia wasn't bad. 270. Freddie Brock, 96 yards on the ground. Ted Hurst, 128 through the air. Diego Pavia was my number 11 ranked quarterback in the SEC. 54.5% completion rating. Can Vandy still go bowling? I don't know, man. I thought South Carolina might be the SEC game they could get. I don't know. We'll see what's in store. I was really high on Vanderbilt coming off of week 2. I think a lot of people were maybe coming back down to earth a little bit, kind of course correcting, if you will. We'll see what happens with Vanderbilt heading into week 4. Jumping 2 spots to number 13 after the piss poor showing at home in Lexington against the South Carolina Gamecocks. The Kentucky Wildcats actually jump a couple spots here in the SEC recap model to number 13. Brock Vandagriff actually playing a much better game. Let me talk about him real quick. So he was my number 16 rated quarterback last week. 3 completions on 10 attempts, 30 yards, a 55 passing efficiency. Much improved, although he still clocks in at the number 17 quarterback in my rankings this week. 14 completions, 27 attempts, no touchdowns, no INTs, just 114 yards though. I mean, against a Georgia defense, you almost expect that, okay? And Kentucky played in a box, man. So this is the game I finished with. Everybody pretty much finished with this game at the end of the night. 13-12, final score. It was all field goals until the fourth quarter. Georgia finally punches it in to go up 13-12. And everybody's talking about it, man. Everybody's talking about it. The Mark Stoops fourth down. You're down to the number 1 team in the country at home in a 1-point game. And you punt the ball. You punt the ball. If you go for it and you don't make it, I think people respect you because you showed the balls to go for it down 1 against the number 1 team in the country. You punt it away, hoping that you get a 3 and out, and they punt it back to you against the number 1 team. Loser behavior from Mark Stoops. I feel sorry for Kentucky. I'm not even hating on Kentucky fans or the team. That's a coaching decision that Mark Stoops is responsible for. It's a loser decision. It's a loser decision. You don't win games punting the ball back to the number 1 team in the country. I don't even know what else to say about that. Moving on. Dropping a spot, number 12, Auburn Tigers. Now, they won their game, but this is just how the numbers shake up, right? I've talked about this a lot. The SEC recap model starts to solidify at the top and the back. You'll still see movement in the middle. That kind of 8, 9 through 12 range, okay? So Auburn dropping, it doesn't mean anything bad happens. They took care of business against New Mexico, 45-19. Jarquez Hunter, 152 on the ground, okay? Got to see a lot of Hank Brown. It was all Hank Brown, I think, in this game. I had him as my number 8 quarterback on the week. 17 of 25, 68%, 235 yards, 4 touchdowns, no INTs. Maybe we see some more of Hank Brown, man. Maybe we see some more of Hank Brown. Number 11 dropping a spot. Again, weird. LSU Tigers. They won on the road, right? To South Carolina. That was basically a toss-up game the way that I had it figured. 36-33 final score. It really came down to the end. I know. Gamecocks fans do not like the officiating in that game. It gets everybody. It does. Bad officiating will get every team in the SEC this year. It sucks. It sucks when it's you. It's great when you're on the other end of it, but it'll happen to LSU this year. Okay. Whatever team you're a fan of, it will happen to you, and it sucks. So I feel for Gamecocks fans. I was actually leaning South Carolina in this game. I liked how disruptive their defensive line was. It showed. Okay. It showed. 6 tackles for loss, decent, 2 sacks. That's not as disruptive as they have been. But Lenora Sellers goes out late. You got to bring in Robbie Ashford. That kind of hurt him there late in the game when you're trying to claw back a win or hang on to a lead. Lenora Sellers, though, comes in number 12 in my quarterback rankings, 10 of 16, 113 yards. He did have the INT, no touchdowns. And as many passes as Garrett Nussmeier slung, guys. Garrett Nussmeier had 40 pass attempts. 40. 24 of 40, 285 yards, 2 tutties, 1 INT. He comes in behind Lenora Sellers at a 119.97. Kudos to LSU for taking, a road win in the SEC is never easy. I don't care who you're playing, unless you're playing Vanderbilt or Mississippi State. But credit to them. They went in, got it done. I really thought this game would swing South Carolina's way. It didn't. It sucks. LSU takes that one home. At the number 10 spot, Arkansas. A closer one, I think, than Razorbacks fans would like against UAB, 37-27. Arkansas hangs on to get the win. Not exactly like trending as positively as you want it to. But Arkansas really kind of holding steady there, really off the back of their offense in my rankings, kind of that number 9, number 10, number 11 spot. Just holding steady there through 3 weeks. They have not moved a ton. So, did they get a bye week? I think they're on a bye this next week, week 4. I'm going to check the schedule real quick. If you hear a pause here, I'm just going to narrate my way through it. Yeah, Arkansas on a bye week 4, and then they get Tennessee at home in week 5. So I think looking to rest up, regroup, game plan for the Vols. They'll probably need it. Vols on an absolute ripper here. Before I get to number 9, even though I've got it here on screen, let me pause one more time just to tell you, if you're here on YouTube and you're liking or hating what you're watching or listening to, smash that like, smash that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter. And while you're here, check out all of the great merch I have at bonfire.com/store/SEC recap. I'll scroll it along the bottom of the screen here. That'll also be in the show description. I've got my Legacy SEC Pride series. For every team except Texas and Oklahoma, I've got a new lineup coming out that will have Texas and Oklahoma included. But I've got something here for every team, guys. Arkansas, Alabama, all the way through Texas A&M, Vanderbilt. Great designs, great color schemes. T-shirts, long sleeve, short sleeve, sweatshirts, and hoodies for every SEC team. Even have some fun T-shirts. I always love to feature my Big Doink Energy T-shirt. Show your love for Big Doink Energy and show your love for Big Doinks with the Big Doink Energy tee. Comes in a variety of colors, long sleeve, short sleeve, and pullover hoodie. Also love to show out my Nico I Am a Believer game style jersey T-shirt. I've got this one and a Big Doinks ordered on the way. Should have them by next week. Hope to show them off on the next podcast. But I absolutely, absolutely love these designs. So head on over there, buy a shirt, rep your team. It helps me out, helps the show out, helps your fan base out, man. Show off the love for your favorite team with the SEC Pride Series. All right. Back to the rankings. Coming in at number 9, South Carolina Gamecocks. Now, they jumped 3 spots this week, which I know is odd. You think you lose a game to LSU. Why would LSU kind of drop a spot and South Carolina jump a spot? It's because of how those efficiency metrics work, guys. I'm telling you, I like to display my numbers on my website side by side with FPI to kind of show you the difference and how FPI captures some of this, but not all of this. My model captures a little bit more in those head-to-head matchups. So I know LSU won, but the model really liked the numbers that it saw from South Carolina. And at the end of the fourth quarter, this is a coin flip game. They were just a missed field goal away from tying this game, sending it to overtime, where I do think momentum would have favored the Gamecocks. It was not like LSU just ran away with this ball game the whole way through, right? That's what my model is able to account for. And that's why you see South Carolina jump this week to that number 9 spot, okay? So I already talked about this game. Not going to go in and rehash all of that again, but just kind of explaining there why you see LSU drop a spot and South Carolina jump. It's because there's a lot of other metrics in there that my model looks at that some other models don't capture. Staying put at the number 8 spot this week, the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, this was kind of my, not upset of the week, but potential to cover of the week for Tulane. I clipped last week's preview video and put out a short talking about how I kind of liked Tulane maybe to cover the, I think it was like 14 or 15 point spread. I had them as an 11-point underdog. And they made it a game in the fourth quarter. Sorry, I'm going back here to try to find the recap. Oh, I'm on week 4. That's why I can't find it. Because I'm a damn amateur. All right. We'll get it here eventually, guys. Just hang tight. Yeah, 34-19 final score there. But it was kind of a game into the fourth quarter. I think Tulane had like a pick 6 near the Oklahoma end zone to make it interesting. And then Oklahoma pulls away with 10 fourth quarter points to put that out of reach of that 15 points. So I was kind of recommending, taking Tulane with the points, but it didn't quite happen. But what did happen was Oklahoma kind of had to like scrimp and hang on against a non-Power 5 team a week before you got the Tennessee Vols rolling into town, who are on the ripper of all rippers. Modern era school record historic rippers. Is Oklahoma ready for what Josh Heupel and the Tennessee Volunteers are bringing? We're going to preview that game. We're going to preview that game in a big way here later in the week on the Wednesday, Thursday episode. Number 7, Texas A&M. They get the road win against Florida. I already covered this game. I'm not going to rehash any of that, but they stay put here. I had them at number 7 last week. They stay put at the number 7 spot. They get that road win, kind of helping to solidify and validate that number 7 spot in my rankings. Some people might have felt that that was too high. I actually might have felt that that was too high. The model did not. The model was right. We don't question the model. We revere the model here on the SEC Recap Podcast. At number 6, Mizzou Tigers. They also stay put at number 6. Had them at number 6 last week. I know a lot of people felt that was a little low. But when you kind of hang on to a 6-point win at home versus 24 ranked Boston College, who I do think is a good team, by the way, the model takes notice. The model takes notice. The model notices all. Brady Cook actually pretty good in this game. Let me read you his numbers. He was number 9, so like dead middle of my quarterback rankings. 21 of 30, 70% completion rating, 264, 9.5 adjusted yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, a 144.03 in my rankings. Nate Noel, 22 for 121 on the ground. Luther Burden doing Luther Burden things, 6 for 117 and a touchdown. Just 1 touchdown through the air, 1 touchdown on the ground. 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks for the Missouri defense. So I think, a lot of the talk coming into the season was, well, we know Mizzou has a lot back on the offensive side of the ball. What do they have on defense? And they played, cupcakes through week 2. What are we really seeing them do defensively? I think Boston College might have shown us that maybe Mizzou's defense is not the Mizzou defense of last year. That is still okay. There's a lot of football to be played. They have a very favorable schedule for the remainder of the year. One of the easiest schedules of all of the SEC teams. So their defense is not bad by any means. I think Boston College is a lot better than a lot of us were expecting coming into the season. Not just coming off of the Florida State win, but period, right? Boston College was a good team. Castellanos, 16 to 28, 249, 3 touchdowns, did have the 2 picks. So, not great, not a great rushing team, but averaged 15.6 through the air per attempt. Really good passing team. So able to kind of carve Mizzou up through the air there. But Tigers hang on, get the win, 27-21 final score. All right. Also staying put at the number 5 spot in the SEC recap rankings, Ole Miss Rebels. I think this is because they still have not played an opponent with a pulse. Now, I know they just played Wake Forest. They beat them like 40-6. Okay. Let me back out and look at the recap here. Yeah, 40-6. Jackson Dart, 377. He was one of my top quarter. He was number 4 quarterback on the week. Okay, 26-34, 2 touchdowns, 1 INT, 169.75. Jackson Dart, definitely in contention for the Heisman. Okay. Jackson Dart, definitely in contention for Heisman. But until Ole Miss gets into the meat of their schedule, which at this point, I'm not even sure what the meat of their schedule looks like. Is it LSU? Is that the best team they're going to play? I don't know, man. I don't know. Ole Miss schedule looking easier and easier every week as well. So until they face like SEC competition or a ranked opponent, it's still really hard to get anything out of what Ole Miss is doing. We believe that they're very good. The eyeball test, the talent on the field, all of that suggests that this is an exceptional team, a playoff contending, national championship contending team. We just have to see them do it against higher level competition. All right. Before I click to number 4 here, I'm just going to warning to everyone. This has not happened in the 3 years that I've been running this model, okay? So I don't want to panic people. If you need like a blanket or a Snuggie or a warm drink, press pause, go get that, okay? Because I don't want anybody to freak out. I don't want anybody to freak out about the team that's coming in next at number 4 in the rankings. Are you sitting down? Are you comfortable? Do you have your safety blankie? Okay, good. It's the Georgia Bulldogs. Okay. Georgia actually drops 2 spots to number 4 in the rankings this week, largely due to some efficiency numbers with that road game at Kentucky. Now, does that mean Georgia is not better than the 3 teams that are ranked ahead of them? Not necessarily. But we have to base these things on metrics, okay? Now, Carson Beck wasn't bad. Kentucky's defense played them in a box, okay? Carson Beck's 15 to 24, 160, no INTs, no interceptions. They just had the 1 rushing touchdown in the 4th quarter. It was Branson Robinson. We only have like 2 carries, by the way, but one of his carries was for that game-winning touchdown. They were pretty efficient through the air, actually, which is one of the things that was surprising. They just couldn't run the ball on this Kentucky defense. Kentucky defense was really stout against the run. They said, you're going to have to throw on us if you want to beat us. And so that's what they did, and they did it well enough. If you go back and you look at that offensive efficiency, the passing rushing efficiency, you'll see Georgia in that quadrant 4, the bottom left quadrant, right? Averaging about 3.4 yards rushing, averaging about 6.5 yards passing, okay? Kentucky was just way worse. I mean, when you had 2 teams that weren't great running the ball, the team that passes the ball slightly better probably has the advantage, and that's what happened with the Georgia Bulldogs. So their offensive and defensive efficiency numbers were just a little bit down this week. That's the reason for the drop. We'll see what happens. Everybody just call a friend, call a parent if you need to take a breather and calm down. It'll be okay. The Georgia Bulldogs will be just fine this season. But let's talk about the Tennessee Volunteers. Coming in at number 3, they jump a spot. They've been holding down that number 4 spot. They jump to number 3, coming off a 71-0, blow the doors off. They led 65-0 at the half. They were playing 4th stringers by the 4th quarter. Kind of blowout against Kent State. I've never seen anything like it. We knew Kent State was bad coming into this game. But I had a friend who was at the game who's actually been on this podcast before. Might be on it again. Might need to get him on here again. But he said that Kent State was so bad it ruined the vibe in the stadium. And that, you saw it just watching it, man. It felt dirty at times, dude. When they're up 30-0 in the 1st quarter and they onside kicked it and recovered. That's dirty, man. That's dirty. Josh Heupel, dirty for that, man. But hey, you're paying that team $1.5 million. You gonna come here and you're gonna take it. Belt to ass, B to A. You just you getting paid to take it. You're gonna take it. We got to practice this stuff. We got to practice this onside kick. Okay, you're gonna take it. Nico Iamaleava was out before the middle of the second quarter. He actually still came in at number 6 in my quarterback rankings, 10 of 16, 62.5%, 173, 1 touchdown, no INTs, 153.53. He was just behind Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe of Alabama, who is going to come in at my number 2 spot on the week. They jump up on from number 3 to number 2, getting it right on the road against Wisconsin. They take Wisconsin 42-10. Jalen Milroe had 12 of 17 completions, 70.6% completion, 196, 3 tutties, no INTs, 168.02. Everybody left them for dead after USF played them close. And the Tide just came roaring back on the road, said, nah, we ain't going nowhere. Ain't going nowhere. Guess who else ain't going nowhere after week 2? Number 1, Texas Longhorns, featuring Arch Manning in week 2. Quinn Ewers goes out with a abdominal, some kind of torso injury. Arch Manning comes in, lights it on fire. This was my number 1 quarterback in my rankings on the week. Not just because of the eyeball test, not just because I like the name Manning, not just because I thought he was good. The numbers don't lie. He was 9 of 12, 75% completion, 223 yards, 25.3 adjusted yards per attempt, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 232.2 passing efficiency rating on the week. Quinn Ewers, a paltry number 3 in my rankings. 14 of 16, 87.5% completion rating, 185 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 INT before he exits with the injury for 184.91. Texas played 2 different quarterbacks. They were the number 1 and the number 3 quarterbacks in my rankings on the week. Now it was UTSA. They handled business 56-7. I know I'm wearing a different color orange on my head. And I know I'm wearing a different power tee on my hat here. But Texas is the best team in the SEC right now. Texas is the best team in the SEC right now. They get Georgia at home in Austin. Can you convince me that they're not going to win that game? I'd love to hear the arguments. I'd love to see the stats. I can't pick them. I cannot pick any other team in the SEC against Texas, even on a neutral site right now. My model can't either. And that's why the Texas Longhorns are staying at the number 1 spot in the SEC recap rankings this week. All right. Let me run them down for you one more time. I'll pop the full thing on the screen here. At 16, we had Mississippi State, 15, Florida, Vanderbilt, 14, Kentucky, 13, Auburn, 12, LSU, 11, Arkansas, 10, South Carolina, 9, Oklahoma, 8, Texas A&M, 7, Mizzou, 6, Ole Miss, 5, Georgia, 4, Tennessee, number 3, Alabama, number 2, and Texas Longhorns keep the number 1 spot in the SEC Week 4 power rankings. Guys, that is going to do it for this episode. We will be previewing the upcoming SEC matchups for Week 4. It looks like We're going to have everything from the bottom of the barrel to top shelf liquor, okay? We're going to have Florida at Mississippi State, the battle for the bottom. We're going to have Arkansas, Auburn, battle of the mid. We're going to have Vanderbilt at Mizzou. We got number 6 Tennessee at number 15 Oklahoma. All right. And then we got a bunch of non-conference games nobody's going to care about outside of people watching on ESPN3. I will be here to recap it, or pre-cap it, I should say, for you on the Wednesday, Thursday episode. Have a great week. Like, subscribe, share this video, drop a comment. Do you think I'm crazy? You think I'm stupid? I don't care. Just be nice about it. If you're going to leave a hateful comment, counteract it by going and buying a t-shirt off my store, bonfire.com/store/SEC recap. I appreciate all of you being here, even if you are a hater. I will catch you on the next one.